we are here. We are here to discuss the movie The Forge.
The Forge.
Christian-based movie.
Christian-based movie.
And how would you describe The Forge, Pete?
I would describe it as a Christian-based movie. I am profound. Remember that.
How would you describe it, ma'am?
I would describe...
Not the woman's version, though.
Okay, I would describe it as a Christian-based movie that's trying to reach our poor, lost young men.
Oh, God, I like that description, poor lost.
That's right. So I would say it was obviously Christian-based movie about the power of a male in a young man's life as he's developing.
I don't think it's just young men. I think it's in older men as well. I think that there are, well, you and I are recipients of that. Bishop Ben, we were older men. I know when I met him, I was 40-something. And you were what?
Well, obviously, I was much younger than you.
So
I was
38.
27.
38.
Right. But there's the power of an older man in any man's life. But the movie was about the power of the older man and a younger man who's in his developmental years.
Yes.
But in agreeing with Roy, I do agree that this movie can reach any man, not just the young men, but the example that they used in this movie was with a young man.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but I think, again, that was the focal point.
That's right.
But there were other examples, like the whole point of The Forge itself were all of these older men who had been discipled, if you will, by the main character. I remember Mr. Moore.
That's right.
Yes.
Brother Moore, right? Joshua Moore. All right. So they had been mentored by him, and then he was challenging them now to go forth and to mentor other men, which, again, Pete and I had experienced through MOV.
That's right. What is MOV? What was
I was just about to say, I should put my Men of Valor shirt on. I should have worn that today.
You should have.
I got time. I wonder if I should have y'all talk while I go change shirts.
No,
but at any rate,
no need.
But Men of Valor, which was a discipleship program for our church.
That's right.
And
for men in our church.
For men in our church, right. And it was a wonderful program. When you got in, just for people to add some context, when you got into the program, I first got in, and it was a 2-year minimum at level 1, right? Because it was supposed to have 5 levels to it. Mayor Bishop said he may have been working on more, but at that point it was 5 levels. And so you had to have a discipleship with the church for 2 years before you could even consider applying to go to level 2. And then there were a number of things that you had to prove and to verify. You needed testimony from people, from females in your life that knew you. You needed income verification, well, maybe that was a level 3, but you know that you were a tither and that you were in service, that you were doing things to help the kingdom of God expand, your family and yourself as well, to minister. And then each year that you were there, that there were some other things that you needed to do to verify, to get to the next level.
Absolutely. And so that was a critical, for me, that program was just absolutely amazing. And I think it also speaks to men and manhood is that it required you to do some work to get to the next level, right? It wasn't as if, hey, you just stay here for 2 years and you qualify. No, you had to go through, you had to attend so many classes. You need to have your card signed off on that you had attended these classes. And those are the things that men love to do. We love challenges, right? This is why we conquer the world. This is why we, what is the name? Clark and them went across the country. What was the name of that? You a teacher?
Yeah, somebody in Clark.
Yeah. They would go across the whole United States by themselves. This is Lewis and Clark, right? Yeah. This is what men do. We like going after challenges and accomplishing things. And in the context of Christian discipleship, it was unique and it was incredibly amazing. Yeah.
Okay, so
talk louder, please.
So now, okay. So the two of you went through a program that was exemplified in The Forge.
Yes.
Okay. And it was beneficial to you.
Incredibly.
So now,
extremely.
Let me ask this question. Do you think this type of program can reach any type of a young man? Meaning, if you've got somebody out there gang banging, if I may, or does that person or maybe a person that comes from a different a home setting, where the home is not so bad, but the young man is a little wayward, or the father or something is a little wayward. I mean, do you think this can reach like our worst of the worst, the gang bangers or the the rough guys.
So your question, if we could rephrase it, or what I hear, let me put it that way, what I'm hearing is, can the love of God change people? Yes.
So, yes.
Right.
Now, and I like the love of God.
Right. Now with that, so I want, because I think you have two parts. So for me, when I hear that, one is God powerful enough to reach anybody? Answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think the thing that you may be getting at is there wisdom enough to win these people over? Right? The Bible says he that wins souls is wise. And so there needs to be a level of wisdom in how men are approached, right? Because the wrong way, we're ready to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if you'll, reflect back on the movie, one of the things that was great about Joshua Moore is it didn't matter how Isaiah, reflected or came at it, he remained calm, right? He was very even keel and kept focusing him back on what he was trying to get done.
And I think in line with your questioning, a good program, whether it be the Forge or MOV that we have, it can reach anyone. But what you have to have is a willing participant.
A willing participant. That's
right.
The answer I was going for.
You have to have that. Now, many times to get that, if you're gangbanging, so working with executives, this story comes to mind. I believe that the best thing for the African American community to have is have a place for example, returning citizens or young men who have not had a solid home, right? A place for them to work, a place for them to be mentored, all of that and it needs to come from us, not from the government, right? This is what I believe. And so I had a conversation with a gentleman who runs a manufacturing firm, and he handles, young men who just got out of jail. They call them different things, returning citizens, etc. And this is what he told me. He said, I will inevitably have a conversation with the young man, right? And I say, the first thing that I give him, the very first thing, which we saw from the movie, the very first thing when Joshua Moore was dealing with Isaiah, he gave him a set of rules. This is the very first thing, right? You show up at this time, right? And by the way, you come earlier than that, right? And what inevitably happens, and again, I'm going back to my executive, he says inevitably happens is the young man will show up for a little while and then he's late, which we saw in the movie, right? And then I got to talk to him about, hey, you're late. Now, because his background may not have been one where he was required to get up on time and all that, he's going to be late again. And then eventually I got to slap him on the hand. Eventually I got to fire him, right? And what happens is, so we're talking about that from the gang banging or from you growing up in the criminal justice system and all that, he inevitably goes back to the streets, but the streets are different now because he's been off in jail, right? And he can't do the same thing he used to do, can't make money. It's more dangerous because now young people, they got even more guns. And so what ends up happening is that young man comes back to me and say, I realize I messed up. Would you give me another chance, right? And I said, you know the rules? Yes, I do. He said, okay, I'll give him another chance. And he says, not only does he come back and he's better for it, I got 5 of them brothers back there working right now in the factory. You see what I'm saying? So yes, the program works. It's just you need somebody who is interested in changing, interested in growing, and they may have, and then what you also saw from the movie with Joshua Moore is you saw a level of patience, right?
Yes.
Which we talked about, right? So this is going back to the movie. You saw a level of patience. When they're a young person who messes up, and it's inevitable that they're going to mess up, right? There's a level of patience to give you another chance. And then an understanding of redirection, understanding of what you being late, what it meant to be late. It meant that all these other people have to pick up your slack. You know what I mean? So, but to answer your question, yes, you can have a program, a good men's program that reaches anywhere.
So let's go back a little bit because you did talk about the set of rules. Mm-hmm. But before he even got to the set of rules, he talked about what do you want? There was, I think it was 5 points, I believe it was.
There were 3 questions.
Three questions. It was. Well, I thought it was more than that, but okay.
How you want people to look at you?
Yes. And those were key. That was key.
Yeah,
that's
well,
key.
I would say there's something even key before that, but keep going.
Okay,
That's right.
I thought it was key because he had to think.
That's right.
He had to really look deep down inside of himself.
That's right.
To come up with those answers, you know. And if any one of you can recall what the questions were And
I don't remember.
okay, all right, I didn't know.
That's a good reason for people to go see the movie.
Right, that is
That's
a great
Figure it out
reason.
yourself.
Yes, for you all to go see the movie. So there were key questions that was asked of him. He says, and you don't have to tell me right now.
That's right. That's right. Now here's something for me though. What I think was the very first thing, right? And this is what I wrote down. What does a mentor or a discipler provide?
Mm-hmm.
What does he provide? To me, the very first thing is, and we've talked about this multiple times, is a vision for something better. So you got to understand, he walks in this building in the movie, walks in the building, no idea what the building is. He meets a man. He has no idea who the man is, but then he comes to find out the man owns the building. He's like, oh, this immediately becomes a vision for something better. No different than when we were in this men's program with Bishop Benjamin. We saw him as something to attain to, right? Because he had a dual master's degree from Stanford, two master's degree in a 2-year period from Stanford. He was, head of global design for Chrysler before he was retired to take over a struggling major. We could see ourselves shooting for or trying to be like him. And in the movie was the same thing. He could see that man. He said, oh, this man carries himself a certain way, right? And then all of a sudden he opens the door and like he sees the whole factory. It's like, so first thing is he's playing games all the time and now he sees something different, something better, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you're talking earlier, when you talk about people gang banging and all that kind of, if that's all they see, that's all they will ever ascribe to.
That's all they will ever, exactly.
That's the only thing. So the first thing is the mentor has to provide visually. You have to be something different.
So let's throw a little Bible in there real quick. So the Bible says this, that without a vision, people perish, right? And if you look at what that translates to, really, it's saying without a vision, there is no restraint.
That's right.
That people will do whatever and live however because there is nothing that they're ascribing to. But when there's something they ascribe to, they'll get in bed on time. They'll get up in time. They'll close, they'll label, they'll do all the things that are necessary because they've got a vision of something better.
Absolutely right.
Exactly.
That's it.
So do you all see that as being the way the society is for not a large part of society? Do you see that as being that as what you described just now, Roy, where there is no vision?
Yeah. Well,
the people perish.
Yeah.
So right now in society, I don't have the statistics or anything, so it just seems as though our society, and you and I talk about this a lot too, society is changing. So
I just want to interject here because I want to make sure we're talking about the four.
The four.
So let's stay on topic with the movie.
Right, and I'm going to take that back to the movie because, you all were saying, this young man had something to look to.
That's right.
In the forge. People, the young men, we're talking about young men or men, they don't have anything to look to. So that's what I'm asking. Do you think society has gotten to that point?
I think for number one, I think we're in the best time in all of human history. You have more people around the world are fed. More people have stuff. It's the wealthiest time. It's the absolute best time to be alive in all of human history. What you have, though, with that is you are able to see all the bad things. So with social media and all these other things, you're able to see all the bad stuff. Right. All the great things still exist. There's still great churches. There's still great institutions of education. It's just that what we see all the times are murderings, killings, robbing, stealing, and all that kind of stuff. So unless you break out of your silo, but this goes back to environment, right? Unless you break out of these things, you won't know that there's something better out there.
So in the forge, Mother says, you can't lay around here. You have to get out and do. So he broke out of his silo, as you just said.
Right. Well, he wasn't going to do it.
But she pushed him to break out of that silo.
That's right. Now, she was a little late with it.
She was.
Because she had waited till 19. It was a little slow. I don't know that any of our mothers would have let us lay around the house that long. right?
Right.
No, you
Yeah.
definitely weren't laying around our house.
Not mine either.
Yeah, no.
And that's my point.
I was
That's my
told
point.
from a young age.
From
you get
what?
a job, you get 10 or 11. You
Go
to
cut
school,
some grass.
getting a job, or you getting out.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And
now
they
that's a
started
societal-
early. Yeah.
Now that's a societal change.
Yes.
You allowing men to not be
Point.
productive longer,
Point.
right? To delay their development. Like that did not happen prior years, prior generations, especially in the black home. That did not happen.
So if we take what we saw in the forge,
Uh-huh.
in which they encouraged us to do, people to do, if we take what we saw in the forge and put it into society, make more of the what is that? What did Bishop Ben call it? Your mentoring group,
Men of Valor.
Men of Valor's type
Organization.
programs or organizations in the churches, in the boys' club or wherever you may, in the community, you will now begin to see it. There may be a shift.
Well,
That will
I
begin to
think you see it. So we don't want to. Let's not act as if those are not there. So
Right.
like we said, there are churches, right? That's one. You've got 100 black men, that organization around the country. You've got, I know because I've spoken for a number of them, Kappa League, right? So the Kappa,
And the
side,
Sigmas,
right?
and
So Alphas, all of
Yeah,
these.
all of them.
There are a number of organizations that have services, right? The thing is that you have to get your child there. Now, unfortunately, I know of mothers who will withhold the attendance to those events as punishment for their sons. Right? So in a lot of cases, this woman said something very profound. I cannot bring out the man in my son.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
But she was also not allowing him to be around, or she didn't, originally I'm saying there's some people who don't allow their sons to be around people who can help them be men.
That's right. That's right. That was interesting. You mentioned that. I saw a post on social media and I refused to respond to it. It was from a pastor's wife, right? And she said, "Do you think a single mom can raise a young man?" And the reason I didn't respond, for number one, this is a divisive post. It's designed to create division between men and women. I think that's one of the main problems or the main strategies of the devil is to create division, right? But now if I were to answer it, I would say a woman can raise a male adult, but it takes a man to raise a man. So there has to be some male input into a young man's life if he's going to fully develop. Otherwise, his development is going to be real slow and real delayed.
Delayed, right. But I want to go off, and that's so correct. I want to go back to you, Roy, what you just said. And I hope the audience picked up on this. There are a number of programs out here. And you named a lot of them through the fraternities, and you said
churches, 100
black men. You don't have to wonder where these are. We have access right now.
There's Big Brother, Big Sister.
Yeah, Big Brother, Big Sister.
Brother,
yes,
right?
yes. So and then look, Google, as you like to call it, gaggle it. Gaggle it, and I'm sure you could come up with a number of mentoring groups for your own son or your own
that's
male
great.
in your home.
So let me switch because I don't want us to deal with the ills. Let's talk about the movie.
Oh,
I want to talk about the movie. Let's just talk about the movie. What nuggets? What blessed you about the movie?
Well, I think because I was literally taking notes in the middle of the movie, right? And I think one of the things I picked up are what I thought, based upon the movie and based upon our own experience, things that are essential for mentoring of young men. I've got a couple of mentees, went to a baseball game, a couple of, actually last month with a couple of different mentees. So there's certain things that you pick up from the movie that I think are absolutely essential. Number one, rules. We mentioned that. Number two, patience. Number three, work, right? Young men, you must work. It's biblical guide. That's the first thing you got to get. And then number four was to stretch, right? Young men, when he was given his shift, it was 9 to 5. But the stretch was, oh yeah, by the way, you got to be here at 8. You got to be here before that just to sit down and talk with me. And so all of those are some of that was the first thing that I picked up was, okay, these are essential if you're going to mentor young men. It's not just come and let me pat you on the back and tell you you're okay. Nope, there are rules. There's a time we start, a time we end. There's a certain expectation about how we dress, how we carry ourselves. I'm going to have patience with you when you mess up. The expectation is that there is work involved, right? Because that's going to help you burn off some testosterone and all that stupidity that's going on in your young mind, right? And then we're going to continue to stretch you so that you grow and develop. So that was the first thing that I took notes on.
So what I took away from the mom's perspective and the lady's perspective in the movie, first of all, mother was a praying woman. And she had enough wisdom to bring the prayer warriors in to pray over her son, as she really didn't know what was going on, with him. But she had enough wisdom to bring those prayer warriors in to pray over him and to continue to pray. They prayed without ceasing. Okay. And that to me was a big piece right there. And then she began to see the change. She began to see God's work. But she wanted to, in my opinion, from what I said, she really wanted to get out there and kind of jump in. But she, wisdom told her, you just keep praying, Mom. That's your job. Your only job is to pray. If more mothers, myself included, can just sit still and pray and watch God move, you'll see some changes coming.
I like that.
Okay. So that was my takeaway.
And that speaks to her relationship with God.
Yes.
Right. So that's one of the key things is that whoever it is, male, female, mom, dad, brother, so, like, what is your relationship with God? Like, do you trust God enough to do this? Bishop used to say, a lot of people are praying for a spouse. And then there are people who say, well, there's no spouse out here. Well, he used to say, you only need one. You need one person. Right? You ain't got to look at all you need is for God to send you one person. But where's your faith? Right? People get so dissuaded and discouraged because things are not happening fast enough or not happening the way they plan, or, whatever these things are. And I think that you're right, that for Mom, her relationship with God was, I'm going to trust God enough, even though I want to do something here. I want to try and help him. No, not Noah. What's my boy's name?
Isaiah.
Abraham. Right. Right. Abraham. I'm going to try and help him out and create an Ishmael. Right.
That's right.
No. You got to give God his opportunity to get there and take it.
I agree.
And that to me was just powerful. And it spoke to me as a mom as well, so.
Now, to me, it also spoke to the roles of a man versus a woman in raising a male. Right, in raising a male man, it spoke to the roles. Right, the man was responsible for laying down these rules because he just disregarded mama's rules.
Right,
he didn't even come up to help her in. He was up all night, and so the male sets the rules for the young man. The male, also had correction in there and all of that. And the mom, her role, hey, I need to pray this man into that boy's life.
Right.
That is huge, and that speaks to the roles.
And allow him to do that, right? Because women have a tendency to be more nurturing.
That's right.
Yes.
Right. And so they perceive a lot of times that the instruction or the correction from a brother is hard.
That's right. It is.
Right.
And it is hard.
Yeah.
It is hard.
But it's supposed to be, right?
That's
by
right.
design.
And so that triggers this other thought. There was this group called the Ghetto Boys. So I know some of y'all who watch the show pretend like you don't know who they are, right? But the Ghetto Boys had this one guy named Wino. All right, that's his name. So we're not judging him for that. But he was on a podcast, and I was listening in, and he said around 11 or 12, he said, me and my brothers, we were off the chain. We were just horrible. And they were robbing, stealing cars and doing those kind of things. And my dad was constantly on us, constantly beating us. But my mom did not like it. She was an educated woman. She didn't want him to pursue that line of correction. And he said, my dad told my mom this. He said, look, I know my bloodline. I know my bloodline. You got to beat us Negroes half to death to keep us in line, right? And mom said she didn't want it. He said, okay, you're just going to go your way. But when they end up dead or they go to jail, don't call me, right? And this is what Wino said. He said, as soon as we knew Dad was not going to be on us, we went crazy. I'm talking about they had storage units where they would store stolen car parts and resell them. And the host said, well, how old were you? Like, we was like 12 or 13. 12 and 13. All the things that Dad said were going to come to pass, and if they'd been to jail, he had been shot 3 or 4 times, just by the grace of God that the man was still alive in his 50s. But it's you know what I mean? It goes back to what you said. There is something about the male in the boy's life that you cannot replace. You know what I mean? And you have to let him. You just have to let, hey, Dad, you handle that boy. You know what I mean? You handle that boy because you know the boy better than I do. You know how that testosterone, all that good stuff works.
And which is essentially what that movie was about.
That's right.
That's exactly what it was about. And, you know, I also think it spoke to that single mom who just feels that she can really, really do it.
Mm-hmm.
But she, I thought she was clear in the movie that she couldn't.
She could not. In the movie, she was clear.
Yeah.
But in reality, how many women are really that clear about it?
That's the
you
question.
you know. So that's just the question.
Right.
So you really need that male role in the life. We were blessed enough in my household to have that male role.
Right.
And in the house, and I have 2 brothers. You know, and mama let daddy handle the boys, and she handled the girls. That's you know, that's what taught them how to dress, how to be, you know, and both, you know, and that is important.
Right. Without question.
You know, and
it is definitely for a male important to have the approval of a man you look up to. That one that you look up to.
Yes.
Come on.
Right? Because that's going to be the, you know, I remember, you know, when my father taught me to tie a tie. And the first time I tied my own tie.
Come on.
And he was proud. Right. I was just, Dad, look at this, right? You know, but it was my father, me showing my dad that something you taught me, I can do.
So this is probably a bad twist on that, but you said somebody you look up to, right?
Yeah.
I remember going to my pastor, Dr. Charles Hawthorne, right? And I was like, yo, Pat, you know, like, I don't want to be like none of them elders. That's what I said. Because they weren't leading anything.
Right.
They were certain they weren't leading the divisions of their companies. It's like their desire for achievement is capped. You know what he told me? He corrected me. He's like, well, just look to me. Yeah. I'm like, okay, that's a good point. That's a good point. You got a bachelor's and master's from UofL. You got an earned PhD. You written several books. Hey, you know, married a virgin. I'm like, hey, that's a good point, which is what you were saying. Right? Somebody I can look up to.
But
that's right.
Back to what you're saying.
Yes.
Your willingness.
Well, absolutely.
Your willingness. That's important.
The other part of it is the willingness is I saw something different. I saw hey, I could shoot for that.
Yeah.
Or at least that's better if I didn't think I could shoot for it.
But your wisdom said, I don't want to do that.
Not them.
You know, but, and then, hey, yeah, you know, so if we see more of that as in the movie,
but that willingness, you know, I think there's also another part to that. My willingness is because you've already gone ahead of me and accomplished stuff, right? So part of that is that there need to be men who have accomplished things in their life that these young men can look up to. They're not trying to find somebody broke, busted, and disgusted, you know, unhappy, unsatisfied, like all of that stuff going on, right? So part of it is that as men, we need to accomplish so the generations coming behind us can see that there's something that's available for them.
Yeah,
exactly. Right. So how do we get there?
By accomplishing.
That's right.
By accomplishing. Okay, so we accomplished. But again, I want to come back to where the movie was, period. We've got to go out and we have to, we're talking from the male's perspective, I guess. Be disciples.
Absolutely.
You know, be disciples. You know,
disciplers.
Right. You already do that through
a number of
so I got a couple of personal mentees.
Yes.
Right? And then and one of the brothers, when I meet a brother at church, young brother, I'm striking up conversations, you know. And, you know, not just how you doing, like, what are you doing? You know, what's your name? How your grades? Are they good? Yeah. So last time I asked a young man if his grades are good, he said they were good, but he was really getting Fs. Are you that dumb? You know, I speak directly. Are you that dumb? Are you getting Fs? Well, no, I'm not. Then what does good mean? You know, and so I try to have actual conversations with young men. And again, I've got someone. Now, it's interesting. I am mentoring a young man, and his mother is like what we talked about. Like, 3 boys. Those boys knew from an early age, you get a certain age, you gone. right? So the one boy goes away to college, gets a job, working, married now. The next son comes along. As soon as he graduated in June, he was in a military, what do they call it, base camp, boot camp in August, right? And he was trying to delay it for 7 months, right? I remember he was trying to delay it for 7 months, and I happened to have some conversation with him because I'm like, wait a minute, you got 7 free months. You ain't gonna do nothing but get shot and get somebody pregnant. Like, can we get up out of here? And I want him to go sooner. And sure enough, he shifted it back and he left like just a couple of months after school. And the youngest one, who I mentor, like we already talking, senior year, go to community college and, get your apartment, all that kind of stuff. So it's about having those real conversations.
The real conversations.
And I think a part of it, while we do, I'm not necessarily advocating that you got to kick your kid out at 18.
But
especially if that kid is not equipped.
That's right.
Right. So I'm not saying you kick your 16-year-old or 18-year-old out non-equipped, but you want to equip them.
That's it.
Right?
Yes.
So part of it is that because that discussion is typically out, like get them out, especially in the black community, get out, but have you equipped me to get out, right? And that's the key. Equipping. I often tell the story, and I'm gonna tell it again because it's my story, my show. So I was accepted. I had letters of acceptance from the University of Michigan, Michigan State, and Wayne State. And for whatever reason, I was going to Wayne State. Right? I think in my head, I still had access to a car, blah, blah, blah. And I love Mom called me in. My father died when I was 14. So it's just me and Mom. Right? So she called me in. She said, let me talk to you for a minute. I said, okay, yes, ma'am. What's up? Cause even though she was a single mother, she knew how to hit me in the face if I got disrespect. I'm just saying,
That's good.
Let's be clear that this woman at 90 told me I'm going to kick your butt. And I'm like, yeah, I would never fight you because I was raised right, but you will have to catch me. And I do think I can outrun your 90-year-old tail. Anyway, she calls me in and she says, I'm not kicking you out. Mm-hmm. She said, but as a young man, I think it's beneficial for you to learn responsibility, and that's probably better done if you go away to school. Mm-hmm. Best advice she gave me a lot of good advice. That was the best advice because I learned in a safe environment.
Safe in a what?
Safe environment.
In a what?
How to grow up and take care of business.
Exactly. And so now this is one of the things that I speak to when I talk about college, when I recognize college is a safe environment for young people, young men to do dumb things.
A safe environment.
Safe environment.
And when I do dumb things, I know, yeah.
Because there are certain things you're going to do because you're young and dumb, right? But in this environment, all the adults are expecting you to do young and dumb things, right? They're expecting it, right? And so it is that there's a slight safety net there, as long as you don't kill nobody and do some things like that, right? But it's absolutely essential. This is why that type of thing. You get out of here, the military, right, where you're going to learn responsibility. You get out of here, you go to college where you're going to learn something. If you're going to stay here, okay, you need to be working and going to school because learning these responsibilities are absolutely critical. It's critical.
Yeah, so in our household, it was the same thing. We are all from pretty much the same generation here. Mm-hmm. The same thing. My father.
I'm younger than both of y'all, but go ahead.
I don't know nothing about
My father was extremely clear. You will go to school, go to military, or get a job. Now, if you stayed here and you had a job, you had 6 months before you got out of the house.
That's right.
But you need to pay rent.
You have to pay the rent.
You need to do right there.
Back to those rules.
You should be responsible for a bill. But there needs to be something there that helps you to start taking on responsibility.
Right. And back at the movie. When she told him about getting the job and you will be paying rent.
That's right.
And then he started to pay his rent.
That's right.
And what did she do?
She bought him a car.
No, she fixed up his car. Yeah, she refurbished granddad's car.
But was over. As old as that was, she might as well have bought him a car.
Like that one was two brand spanking new.
Because Joshua helped. Anyway, but there were other things. There are also other things that I think that are important in the movie, right? And that's the thing with forgiveness. But it was forgiveness, right? Because Home Slice had a lot of anger, right? And with all of the great things that we saw in his life, all the development, all the stuff. I mean, going back to apologize to the shop owner, there was a level of forgiveness. Mm-hmm. But when he saw his dad, right, his anger took over, right? And even there, the mentor was there to help through this thing. Like, dude, let me tell you a story, right? Because this
was transparent,
right? Yeah. This is just one bump on the road, right? And it's going to happen. And I don't know about anybody else, but when Homeboy I don't want to tell the story, but when the white guy that was in the forge shared his story with him, like that, to me, that was like stop right here,
That's
like
right.
Selah,
That's right.
stop right here and listen, pray on this speech, right?
I agree. Now, here's a question I have for you, because I had this conversation with someone else, right? They talked about how the importance of a young black man, right, receiving counsel and counseling to deal with all of that anger, right? And to me, this is kind of this modern day language. I still say the very first thing that you need to be doing as a young man is working. We can work until you have the intellectual and emotional maturity to deal with that anger and deal with that forgiveness. But now some of the language that I hear, this is a societal piece, right, is that, oh, you need to deal with those feelings. And then, no, you need to go work. And then if we need to deal with that when you're 27, we can deal with it at 27, right? But I don't put dealing with your emotions, it's just me, I don't put dealing with emotions and feelings above or in front of work. Go to work first as a young man. Go to work first. And here's where I get that from. What was the prophet that was running from the queen? Who was that?
No, Elijah.
Elijah, right? When you look at the story of Elijah, right? He had won this big battle, right? And then the queen comes along, it was Jezebel, right? Jezebel says, I'm
gonna get you.
Be it unto me if you ain't dead by tomorrow.
Right.
And he is in his feelings. Elijah's in his feelings, and he is like, it's like the end of the world is coming, right? And so the first thing that the Lord does is send him to burn off some of that emotions.
Okay.
Go on a long walk, right? Go on a long walk. Then a long way I'm going to feed you, right? But then when he has a chance to get right in front of God, you know how God has him to deal with those feelings? He listens to him. Then he corrects him. He's like, no, had a whole bunch of other prophets over here, right? So you're wrong about that. But by the way, I'm not massaging any of those feelings. Go back and find your replacement. He sent him back to work. He sent him back to work. So this is kind of how my theory about this is that we lean into young people's emotions as if we have no ability to control and be successful and functional if we don't.
I want to say something different about a different take.
Yes.
So I like the go to work.
Yep.
I like that stuff. Here is what I want to do. So I said earlier that young men should get out if they're equipped to get out.
That's right.
What happens is we don't equip people to deal with emotions.
I agree.
So just because you're emotional don't mean pissed.
I agree.
I'm sorry, can I say pissed? My mom ain't here, is she? Okay. My mom would get on me for saying that. You can't cuss. I ain't cussing, mom. Right? But what happens is people not grown folks, forget young people, grown folks, 60, 70, 80 years old, don't know how to deal with their emotion. I'm overwhelmed. I'm like, what are you telling yourself? So you're telling yourself to fall apart.
That's right. That's right.
So part of that is that I want you to go to work, but I also want you to learn to deal, like I can work through this, right? I'm not saying necessarily work. When I say work through it, I mean work through the fact that I'm feeling what I'm feeling, but I still got to do what I got to do.
And it doesn't, that's right. It's not going to debilitate.
Right. It's not right. And that's where I think people mess up is that they allow themselves to be debilitated by what they feel. Right. Your feelings are subject to change. There's a book that I cannot tell you the name of, but I will tell you what the cover of it says. F your feelings.
Oh, that's right.
Okay. Right. That's that. They right, because it's you can fill in the last three letters, but it's F your feelings. And the whole thing is that when you allow yourself to be feeling driven, you win. But when you take authority over feeling, they're still there. Feel them, deal with them, but still do what you got to do. Tag.
So, and I hear what you're saying about the feelings and everything, but. And you may have had trainings in adverse childhood experiences.
ACEs, that's right.
Yeah, ACE. So we have to also look at, when we're dealing with these young men and women, and men in this case, we have to look at their adverse childhood experiences. That's trauma.
That's right.
They've got a lot of trauma that they're dealing with. So in order, a lot of times, to get them to the place of being willing, as we've already talked about, you've got to be able to deal with them from that perspective.
I understand. That sounds like a woman says.
Right. I was just about to say this is
sound like a woman.
That sounds like a professional.
That's right.
Social
Professional.
That's
Been trained
a woman. Look, that's a woman. That's a woman.
This is what you just said. This is what you just said.
Adverse childhood experiences are real, though.
They are real.
We didn't say they weren't.
We didn't say, but you just said we got to put an assessment in front of dealing with them. No, we don't.
Why not?
Go to work. We don't explain it to you.
But I don't disagree with
go to
you.
work.
Let me restate what I'm saying.
Okay.
So based on what you're saying with these adverse childhood experiences, I'm saying you gonna have adverse childhood experiences.
For everybody.
And what I'm telling you is, so let's talk about not letting those adverse childhood experiences debilitate you. Right? And so what we do is we coddle people. So I teach school, and I've got kids with a 504. I got people with plans. And they know how to work their plan to their advantage.
Oh my Lord.
Right? But it's because you have been trained to do that, right? You can do the work. You can do these things, but you choose based upon what you have been told to let this overwhelm you.
That's right.
And I'm not disagreeing with
Oh, you are, but go ahead.
No, I am not disagreeing with this. However, we do need, at some point, when mentoring these folks, listen, you have got to deal with that trauma.
I'm not saying you don't. Correct.
Okay.
I'm not saying you don't.
I'm saying you don't.
You're saying that, okay?
Or not in this way that you're describing. And let me tell you why. First of all, modern psychology has only been around since 1950.
Okay.
So are you telling me that for thousands of years before that, we had to take a survey to figure out how to deal with adverse experiences? And let me explain adverse experiences. You don't have enough food to feed your children. This is what happened, like up until the 18th century. Like we went to war, tribe against tribe, to even be able to feed our children. We live in so much wealth we don't recognize, right? Before our empire. Last century alone there were 2 world wars. We didn't have to go through adverse childhood experience training to get through our days. And so this is a modern thing.
Exactly.
That you got to massage those feelings. No, you don't.
When you know better, you do better, right?
So let me explain like this. Men especially, right? When it comes to our feelings, because this is a common thing, right? Well, men, they're not in tune with our feelings. Do you understand that throughout most of history, men would regularly go out to war to protect their families? So what that meant, what war then meant was, last night we went out to war, my best friend is killed. How much time do I have to sit around and massage that feeling? I got to get up and go to war the next day. So what I have taught folks is men deal with our feelings differently. We work through our feelings. Women, y'all can stop, talk to each other, chat it up. We work through our feelings over time, and responsibility come on it. And I don't even need an assessment. I don't need to know whether my aces are 4, 5, 6 or whatever. Over time, what happens is especially if I follow a certain set of rules, what did Bishop Ben say? The first thing he used to say is, be a good father. And if you're not a dad yet, be a good son, be a good brother. There are certain, even before you find your purpose, there are certain things you should work on being good at, right? And over that period of time, as you're working on those things, that's how you end up.
But I do
agree with that.
But I think that's the part. I don't think that's all of it.
No, it
I think that's beneficial, but I think at some point brothers need some people to talk to.
That's right.
Right? That's and so you need to talk about them. I'm not saying don't deal with your trauma. Right. But what I'm saying is don't let the trauma lead. And I think that what happens is that many people allow trauma to lead. So if I'm getting out of line, then just tell me I'm out of line. But you could have been described as having adverse childhood trauma.
Based on the scale, I got 6 out of the 10. Yes.
Right. And I mean, for the most part, you're okay.
Well, except when I come around here.
Well, I'm just saying. That's what I say for the most part. Right?
I'm triggered.
Every now and then I have to let you be here.
So I bring that up.
But I just want to say, because so just as a Christian, right? Having talked to multiple Christians who have come to me overwhelmed. Like, why are you overwhelmed? Like, you've allowed like people wimp out. Right? One of my favorite scriptures, I don't know if you know this, one of my favorite scriptures, like it's probably right up there, but it is not number 1, it's right up there.
What is it, Ron?
Psalms 27, 13 and 14. I have fainted unless I believe to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, he will strengthen your heart. Now, the word fainted, right? If we read, let's just substitute that word. I caved in, quit, pumped out, thrown in the towel, except I believe that there's something better ahead. Right? And so part of what people are saying to themselves is they don't think things are going to get any better.
Belief.
And as a result
the word
of that,
tells you.
Yeah, that's right. What I'm saying, as a result of that, they allow themselves to be overcome, and then this is what paralyzes them.
That's right.
Right? So again, I'm not saying don't
That's
deal
right.
with it. I'm saying
That's right.
let's acknowledge they're there and let's deal with them as we're moving on.
Moving forward.
So-
And so let me slide this in there too. So
See,
moving
I'm trying to talk. We're gonna let you talk.
So that was one thing, right? Way to believe, that's one point of it. I was talking to someone about my ACEs and all of that. And I said, because one of my most difficult times in my life was when I had gone through divorce, right? And I had moved into one of the properties that I owned. The people weren't paying, so we kicked them out. And all I had in the house was an air mattress, a futon, and my cassette player, my CD player. And the lady I was talking to this time gave me a Sade CD. And I played this song, Soldier of Love, on repeat for about 12 hours, right? And the lyrics of the song go, I've lost the use of my heart, but I'm still alive. Whoa. And I was in a bad, down, discouraged place, right? I go to the doctor and I said, my workout's not right, my energy's low, what's going on? They run all the blood tests, I'm at my peak fitness. Like, well, everything shows up wonderful, right? Okay, well, take this test. It was a 10 question test, wasn't ACEs, but a 10 question to evaluate how I'm doing mentally. They said, oh yeah, we see what's going on here. Take this prescription and take this and you'll be fine. So, okay. Now the good thing is this is what the Lord had. One of the sisters in my church worked at the Kroger pharmacy. And I go to her and I said, sis, the doctor gave me this. What's your opinion of this? She's like, oh. She told me, she said, first of all, I don't like this because everybody that takes them, nobody ever gets off of them.
Adderall.
They're on them all the time. They never get off of them. So she said this, because we all went to the same church. She said, so if you know, wink, wink, what to do with how you're feeling, right? She said, that's what I would do. And I was like, oh, I know that because I knew enough of the word, right? What does the word say? The word says, put on a garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. So this is a biblical plan for dealing with discouragement, garment of praise. So I took the CD, I threw that mug in the trash, and we had wild gospel 24/7.
Never got the prescription filled.
No. Here's an interesting thing. On the way out, I asked her, I said, oh, by the way, how much does this cost? She said, it's only $5, which is $5. And I said, nope, never got the prescription, but put on the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. So I had the praise plan 24/7. That was number one. Number two, laughter does good like medicine. So what I did was every morning I would listen to Steve Harvey. Now I'd turn it when he got to the music because I didn't need to hear as a single man going through the front. I didn't need to hear about Mrs. Jones and all of that. But I would listen to them every morning, right? And then I said, okay, I need to keep my exercise together. That's going to be a physical release of different emotions. But there were biblical principles that I operated in to get myself out of this place. You see what I'm saying? So that to me is what was there even before the 1950s. That what was there when black folks were going through Jim Crow, when we were going through redlining, when we were just out of slavery. We have the biblical model for how to deal with it. How to deal with these struggles.
Now, had you lost your point? Go ahead.
I did.
Okay. So again, going back around there. So with the boards, right?
Yes.
Because this young man didn't know Jesus.
That's right.
So there was not there for him.
May I make a correction?
Come on.
He didn't know Jesus for himself. That is true.
That's good.
But he had been introduced to Jesus through his mother.
Well,
yeah.
He had been introduced to the church.
Yeah, the church,
Yeah. But so Pete was just talking about having had a number of tools that would come from people being in, at least in the atmosphere of church. There are a number of young men who don't, right? But what happened was, I love that the Joshua and the men of the forge acted as what Paul calls living epistles.
That's good.
There were letters read by this young man and the other young men there that were giving them something to aspire to. And notice that Isaiah had the trauma. He still had the pain of his dad, but it was not this forefront thing that I'm this angry youth, I'm this, that, and the other thing, right? It came up when he saw it. We still need to deal with it, and we'll pray our way through it, but we still need to be able to go forward. And I think that is a major message, that people feel like they have the right to be stuck somewhere. No, you need to get up and go forward.
The right to be stuck. That's so good. I absolutely agree. I remember a time there was I got in a car accident and I needed I developed my own physical rehab plan. All right. And so it involved me working up in Ann Arbor for Zingerman's mail order. So this is where
Wait, is this the deli people?
the deli people. They're one of their businesses. So what they would do is they hired the last 6 weeks of the year, they hired like 200 or 300 people to fill orders. So I'm working on the overnight shift because the Lord had spared my life. It was on the 696, a major highway here, but there was these kinks and stiffness, and I'm like, I can't sit around. This is going to get worse, right? But what I found myself was working alongside of young brothers who were either from the hood or from Inkster or different places, just low-income places. And we would have conversations. They had rules. You'd work your full 8-hour shift. They would feed you, right? But the only time you're supposed to leave is if you took a little 15-minute break, you went outside to smoke, right? And because we were dealing with food, you couldn't smoke inside, you couldn't bring your food. And there were a couple people that were constantly breaking this rule, right? Gave him some chances, and one of them got fired. Now, the guy that got fired, his cousin was working alongside me, and he was mad because so-and-so got fired. I said, so why you mad? He said, oh, they fired him. You know what I mean? But look at my man over there. He going slow as could be, right? And I had to spend time while working. I said, yeah, but you need to pay better attention. So this is a part of the Forge, having conversation with young men, right? I said, you need to pay better attention. That same guy you talking about, look at him. What's on his ankle? He had a bracelet on, right? So you know that he's got a record, right? I said, he's going slow, but let's watch him and see how many times tonight he stops. He don't stop the whole night. I said, so now I need you to imagine you running this place, right? And you're willing to pay out $17 an hour. Who are you willing to pay? A guy that goes half speed but does not stop, or a guy that stops all night long and is constantly trying to skirt the rules and is foul to be around? Which one would you want to work, and which one would you want to get rid of, right? And I just left that, right? A day later, he came back. I see what you're saying, right? And so the point of that is that engaging with one, which is what we saw in the movie, which is what you were alluding to, right? That engaging with young men, young people is critical. You said this at the very beginning, right? Asking questions, because there were 3 questions. Once you're around young men, speaking with them and asking them questions, getting them to think, that was the only thing that I took away that I was not a fan of in the movie, right? Is that they didn't show enough of that model. Right? They did a lot of telling Isaiah what he should do. But I'm like, hey, I loved it when they asked the questions. And that's just a personal thing. I ask more questions, getting to think more, you know. But that's just absolutely critical to get a young person to think, is to ask them questions about where they're going to be, how you're experiencing, what's going on, etc.
Well, I think another thing that I found very beneficial for young people that I thought was reflected in the movie is that young people need responsibility.
Oh, yes.
And when you give them responsibility and allow them to, win or fail at that responsibility, and then help them to, get back on track if they fall, I think that's extremely beneficial. I love the fact that the movie was focused on men, that the women were there. They had their part. As you said, they had their role.
That's right.
But this movie was so squarely focused on what men could do to make better men for society.
That's right.
And I thought that was just priceless.
Absolutely.
Right. So, and they really brought it home at the end, we'll tell the end, but they
don't tell it.
Well, I'm not telling you.
I got
Go see
That's
the
right.
movie.
That's right. This was also critical to me too.
Wait, let her finish this point.
And just be encouraged.
Be encouraged.
Encouraged.
So I wrote down like what qualities or requirements are essential for a mentor or to be a mentor. And so obviously anybody that's listening is, if you haven't gone to the movie, we encourage you to go. If you have gone,
go again.
Take
somebody with you.
Yes.
And we encourage you obviously to start mentoring right where you're at. Start discipling right where you're at. And there were a couple of things that I thought were critical that the movie brought out, right? What is a mentor? I said a mentor is someone with a desire and ability, right?
Yeah.
Desire, committed to helping. And I heard someone recently said this, not just interested in helping, because when you're interested, you make excuses. But when you're committed, you change things around,
You're
right?
in it to win it.
You're in it to win it. So then be someone that commands respect. Now, that doesn't mean you have to own your own company and all of that kind of stuff. But you should have... you probably want to wait a little while for mentoring, if you got a case going. You know what I mean? You got a murder case you're trying to get through. Maybe wait a little while till we get some character things together, right? But besides that, be a man that is either working and has got a good family. You just have some level of success and all that, right? And then there were a couple of things I think we saw in the movie. We've mentioned this before. The mentor was patient with the young man.
Okay.
But this we didn't lean into too much, but he was definitely personally transparent and vulnerable.
Yes.
Like one of the things he said, eventually I learned to listen.
Yeah.
That's what you talk about, that living testimony piece, right? When you come out and you share your own story, you talk about being a fountain, not a drain, right?
Oh.
And then this was critical too, I thought. The mentor must believe that Christ is the answer to all your problems. Because that's what they did, right? While there were worldly things, right? Hey, we need to fill this order. We already saw that. But they believed that Christ was the answer to all the problems. And they displayed Christ.
Not only that, but they believed it in such a way that they convinced the mentee.
That's
because he took a break. Mama, I need y'all to pray.
Exactly
right. Look, and I ain't got no more time, but all I need is I'm gonna drop y'all pray and I'm gone.
And Roy said,
that's right. You know why? It's because they displayed Christ in word and deed.
Yeah.
So the word, they spoke the word, they shared their faith testimony, right? We learned about the son dying, right? That was in word, but in deed. Not only did he give them a job, but he's bringing them food, right? And so that's word and deed, and I think that was critical in terms of what my man was as a mentor and how they lived their life. Oh, then I put this one, right? I don't see it on there, but they also had their own mentor.
Right.
Yes.
That was critical too.
Yes.
Right. Or coach.
That's right.
Right.
Coach.
It's a coach.
That's
right.
You
You have somebody to coach you.
That's right.
Through the process.
So
yes.
what they talk, well, those are those accountability
That's right.
coaches that, that's the buzzword now pretty much.
Yeah.
But people need
Absolutely.
accountability coaches. I think Roy thinks he's my accountability
He
coach.
probably thinks he is.
Yeah.
I got
Final remarks.
Okay, final remarks. Nothing big here. Just, make sure you make plans to go see the movie. Take someone with you, preferably a young man or male. Because as Roy did say, this movie is geared toward the men. And I think you will benefit a lot if you go see it.
I say, look to be active, have some type of influence in a young man's life. Because you do not know how that will positively impact him. And you may not know for a decade or two, but just having some impact in some young man's life is absolutely critical.
So I think I want to say, because I want to make sure that this doesn't come across like I'm throwing shade, but there are a number of programs right now that are female-centered, right? It's female, like I noticed it starting with Black Panther. Right, just this whole slew of elevating the status of women, which is great. But what that did was also decrease the status of men.
Absolutely.
Right, and so at this juncture, I'm going to just encourage people to lift brothers up.
Come on,
and help brothers to make the next step. I listened to a young man he's got to be in his 20s, but a young man on TikTok that was just talking about that for young brothers that have a woman that will stick with them. Right? So women, you're not absent in the equation because you can be a big source of inspiration and encouragement for a young man. But dad, brother, friend, you also are necessary to make sure that we can have a better country, a better world than what we have today. All right. Until next week.
That was well stated.
It was. I'm a Michigan State grad. Proudly.
I don't know what one has to do with the other.
You said it was well stated, so my education. Sir. Sir.
I thought it was just luck. That's all.
No, it was my education. I was trained. Thank you for being with us this week.
Oh, you're more.
We certainly do it. Until next week, this is your brother Roy.
And this is Pete.
Reminding you of this, that no matter what circumstance or situation you face, when you face it with the Lord Jesus Christ, there is hope. God bless you both.